One quiet afternoon in a small American town, the atmosphere in Homie's Diner took a tense turn when a racist incident sparked outrage. Anna, a passionate young waitress, couldn't stand by as three teenagers hurled slurs at Thomas, an elderly African-American customer. Their hateful words and threatening demeanor shook the once friendly diner, leaving other patrons silent and uncomfortable. Determined to do the right thing, Anna bravely intervened, only to be met with an unexpected twist. The manager fired her instead of supporting her. Stripped of her livelihood for defending someone targeted simply because of his race, Anna faces uncertainty and heartbreak. In this unfolding drama of courage and injustice, the question arises, will a community stand up against hate, or remain passive in the face of discrimination? Stay tuned for the full story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. In the small American town where Homie's Diner sits, the day began like any other: quiet chatter, the smell of fresh coffee drifting through the air, and the distant hum of traffic passing by. Anna, a devoted waitress known for her warm smile and willingness to help, bustled from table to table, greeting longtime regulars with genuine familiarity. Then, an ordinary afternoon turned tense and unsettling the moment three rowdy teenagers burst through the door, eyes scanning the diner until they found Thomas. Thomas, a kind-hearted African-American man who'd been visiting Homie's Diner for years, had always enjoyed the calm, neighborly atmosphere. Yet, the hateful stares and whispered remarks from these newcomers quickly cast a dark cloud over the once welcoming room. Undeterred by Thomas's gentle demeanor, the trio hurled cruel slurs, ridiculing his appearance and culture. Their harsh voices echoed against the clink of silverware, sparking discomfort among other patrons. Most averted their gaze, unsure of how to intervene or afraid to make the situation worse. Anna, however, refused to let intimidation triumph. She calmly approached the table, heart pounding as she attempted to defuse the situation. Rather than backing down, the teenagers escalated their hostility, jeering at Anna for protecting a stranger who, in their view, didn't belong. Determined not to abandon Thomas in the face of such open discrimination, Anna stood her ground, urging them to stop. The tension soared as they continued hurling insults, some of which were racially charged and deeply offensive. Realizing that words alone wouldn't curb their aggression, Anna insisted they leave if they couldn't act respectfully. Unexpectedly, the diner's manager arrived, wearing an expression of alarm and irritation. Initially, Anna believed he'd come to assist her, to show solidarity against the cruelty unfolding before his eyes. Instead, he scolded Anna for stirring up trouble, complaining that the teenagers' families were reliable customers who contributed significantly to the diner's revenue. Anna, stunned by her manager's indifference to the blatant racism, tried to reason that defending Thomas was simply the right thing to do. Despite her pleas, the manager cut her off mid-sentence, issuing a harsh ultimatum: apologize or lose her job. Horrified by the demand, Anna refused to betray her own conscience. In front of other shocked diners, the manager unceremoniously fired her. Tears threatening to spill, Anna held her head high as she walked out. Witnessing everything, Thomas bowed his head in shame and sorrow, blaming himself for her predicament. But Anna quickly assured him that she had no regrets. By nightfall, the internet began buzzing with second-hand accounts of the incident, stirring an outpouring of anger over the intolerable display of racism. Word spread that Anna had been fired for standing up for a man targeted because of his race, sparking questions about Homie's Diner's priorities and how far one should go in the name of fairness. The stage was set for a showdown between cowardice and courage, with the fate of the diner, and perhaps the town's conscience, hanging in the balance. Outside the familiar walls of Homie's Diner, evening shadows began to stretch across the quiet streets, but the tension of that afternoon still hung heavy in the air. Inside, a handful of remaining customers whispered among themselves, replaying the earlier confrontation between Thomas and the three teenagers. Although Anna had been fired and left with her dignity intact, the shockwaves of that racist encounter continued to ripple through the town. As the hours passed, more people became aware of the incident through whispered rumors and hurried phone calls, each retelling adding another layer of disbelief and anger. Thomas, still visibly shaken, lingered in his booth for a while longer. He worried that if he walked outside alone, the teenagers might still be there, waiting to escalate their assault. Even if they were gone, the hateful words and the memory of those mocking voices echoed in his mind. With Anna gone, there was no one inside the diner he felt truly safe speaking to. Every few minutes, he would look down at the coffee mug cupped between his hands, remembering the slurs the teens had used and reliving the sting of their hostility. He tried to stay calm, reminding himself of the resilience he'd built over the years. Yet, nothing in his past had prepared him for such a blatant act of hatred in a place he had always trusted. Behind the counter, the manager pretended to busy himself with receipts and paperwork. A bead of sweat trickled down his forehead as he thought about how the whole scene might affect business. While he'd publicly chastised Anna for causing a disturbance, a small part of him knew how wrong it was to ignore that kind of harassment. Still, his primary concern centered on finances and the potential backlash from the teenagers' families. The idea that a few local VIP customers might boycott the diner had mattered more to him than standing against racism. Each time he glanced at Thomas, the manager felt a pang of guilt, though he quickly buried it under practical fears of losing revenue. Meanwhile, a few remaining patrons exchanged uneasy glances, uncertain whether to voice their moral outrage or quietly leave. Some were ashamed they hadn't intervened when the teenagers first began hurling slurs, others rationalized their inaction with excuses like, "It all happened so fast," or "We didn't want any trouble." A couple of them, who knew Anna well, kept replaying the scene in their heads, still stunned that her act of courage had cost her a job. Their confusion grew as they struggled to reconcile the friendly diner they loved with this sudden eruption of hateful behavior. Outside, nightfall brought little comfort. News of the confrontation spread across social media, garnering attention from people in nearby towns who couldn't believe such an overt display of racism could occur in a supposedly tight-knit community. Many were horrified to learn that Anna, the one person who had tried to defend Thomas, was the one who paid the price. Soon enough, the stage was set for a reckoning. What had begun as a routine afternoon at Homie's Diner evolved into a rallying cry against prejudice, one that no one in town, least of all Thomas, would soon forget. In the days following Anna's termination from Homie's Diner, the town was consumed by conversation and debate about the blatant racism she had confronted. News of the incident spread rapidly, with locals either condemning or downplaying what had transpired. For some, the idea that Thomas, a long-standing patron, could be humiliated so openly in a place that prided itself on family values revealed the true undercurrent of discrimination lurking beneath the town's pleasant exterior. Others, swayed by the manager's insistence that Anna had overstepped her bounds, believed she had jeopardized the diner's business by confronting the teenagers so forcefully. Meanwhile, Anna found herself in an unexpected spotlight. People who had barely noticed her before now approached her in the grocery store or sent messages online, sharing their own experiences with prejudice. A local college professor reached out, inviting her to speak about standing against racism in small communities. While part of her felt empowered by this support, another part remained anxious about her uncertain future. With no steady income and rent looming, she wrestled with fear over whether her moral stand would cost her everything she'd worked to achieve. Thomas, too, endured the fallout. Though he'd experienced discrimination before, never had he been targeted so flagrantly in a place he visited regularly. He carried the weight of guilt, feeling that if he had never walked into Homie's Diner that day, Anna might still have a job. Friends rallied around him, offering words of comfort and encouragement. Some urged him to consider legal action against the diner. Yet, Thomas hesitated. His intention had never been to make a scene or cause harm to anyone else's livelihood. He wanted basic respect, a right he believed he was owed, yet had been denied. In the midst of this turmoil, the three teenagers remained notably absent from public scrutiny. Rumors circulated that their families were protective and influential, using financial clout to avoid too much blame. Regardless, the viral nature of social media was relentless. Someone at the diner had discreetly recorded a portion of the confrontation, and the short video clip, capturing the teenager's hateful words and Anna's dismissal, ignited widespread outrage. Underneath the video, comment sections erupted with opinions, some condemning the racism on display, others accusing Anna of overreacting. Homie's Diner, once a centerpiece of local life, now saw a decline in customers. The manager grew increasingly agitated, snapping at remaining staff and cursing the bad publicity that threatened his profits. He refused to acknowledge the role his inaction had played, instead blaming Anna for disrupting the diner's image. Meanwhile, a nascent grassroots movement began to take form in the community. People shared stories of bigotry they had encountered, tagging posts with hashtag #StandWithAnna and hashtag #JusticeForThomas. What started as a single act of hateful bullying now illuminated a broader issue. It was about more than just one confrontation, it was about whether the town would continue turning a blind eye to racism, or finally stand up and strive to erase it once and for all. In the aftermath of the escalating controversy, Homie's Diner struggled to maintain any sense of normalcy. The lunch rush dwindled to a trickle, and regular patrons who still frequented the diner did so in hushed tones, as though half expecting another confrontation to erupt. The manager, having stubbornly insisted Anna's firing was justified, sank deeper into anxiety with each empty seat. Local newspapers began printing stories on the incident, painting a picture of a community grappling with an ugly undercurrent of racism. Thomas's name appeared in headlines alongside Anna's, reminding readers of the indignity he had suffered in what was supposed to be a friendly neighborhood establishment. Outside the diner, a small group of protesters gathered every afternoon with signs reading, "No place for hate" and "Stand with Anna." Though their numbers were modest at first, their presence signaled that this was more than a fleeting news story. Concerned citizens handed out flyers detailing what had happened, calling for a boycott until Homie's Diner acknowledged its failure to protect Thomas. The manager, bristling at the attention, tried to spin the narrative by claiming Anna's behavior was too confrontational and had created a hostile environment for patrons. However, the video circulating on social media told a different story, one of blatant harassment aimed at Thomas, followed by Anna's calm but firm intervention. Meanwhile, Anna received unexpected support from voices beyond the town's borders. A civil rights advocacy group reached out, inviting her to share her account of the racism she had witnessed. She was also asked to appear on a local television broadcast, where she spoke candidly about deciding she could not stay silent. Her earnest demeanor resonated with viewers, some of whom offered her financial help or job leads. Yet, beneath the encouragement, Anna still wrestled with uncertainty. She appreciated the newfound platform but never sought fame, she only wanted to do the right thing. Thomas tried to keep a low profile during the media storm, though reporters continually approached him for a comment. He chose his words carefully, noting he was far from the first black man to face hostility in a supposedly quiet town. Others came forward, sharing their own experiences of discrimination and fueling the unrest. Thomas felt conflicted each time he remembered how Anna had lost her job defending him. Within a week, the protests doubled in size. Families marched together, children clutching signs alongside their parents. Online petitions demanded Homie's Diner apologize and enforce anti-discrimination training. Each day, the manager peered from behind the counter, watching the crowd swell. With every passing hour, it grew clearer that silence and denial would no longer suffice in the face of such a powerful outcry. Some protesters began coordinating peacefully on social media, encouraging more community members to join the demonstrations. Others focused on delivering petitions to local officials, hoping they would formally address the situation. As the days passed, it became evident that Anna's dismissal had exposed a deep-seated problem many had chosen to overlook for far too long. Word quickly spread beyond the town's borders that Thomas had been harassed at Homie's Diner and that Anna was fired for defending him. Local news outlets picked up the story first, describing a small community facing long-ignored racial bias. Then national media took notice, highlighting the diner as a flashpoint for America's ongoing struggle against discrimination. Late-night talk shows and online commentators discussed the situation, many calling out the injustice of punishing someone who simply stood up against bigotry. As the video continued to go viral, a new wave of supporters arrived in town, among them, a tightly knit group of motorcycle enthusiasts. Some lived in neighboring counties, while others traveled from states away, determined to show solidarity. They formed a massive gathering in front of the diner, their bikes gleaming under the sun as they chanted slogans like, "Justice for Thomas" and "Stand with Anna." Their diverse membership included people of different races and backgrounds, symbolizing unity in the face of hatred. While a few locals were initially startled by the bikers' imposing presence, tensions eased when they saw the group's peaceful conduct. They brought bottled water for the protesters, helped manage traffic on busy corners, and made sure no one was blocked from getting essential services. On social media, images of leather-clad riders joining families and children in protest quickly went viral. Commentary ranged from awe at the sudden show of force to admiration for a community banding together across demographic divides. Inside Homie's Diner, the manager felt mounting pressure. The once steady flow of customers had turned into a trickle, with many seats empty during peak hours. Outside, the noise of motorcycles and protesters was constant. Each time he ventured to the window, he saw an even larger gathering than the day before. In response, he tried offering discounts and posting statements that the diner serves everyone equally. Yet his words rang hollow, overshadowed by the viral footage of him dismissing Anna's concerns. Patrons were not quick to forgive or forget. Anna, meanwhile, wrestled with how to handle her new role as a public figure. When she ventured into town, people frequently approached her with words of encouragement or thanks. Strangers shared stories of encountering similar discrimination, expressing gratitude that she had brought the issue to the forefront. Though she was moved by their support, she also felt the weight of responsibility. She worried about her next steps, finding a job, paying her bills, and maintaining the momentum so real change could emerge from this painful situation. Thomas likewise experienced a renewed sense of purpose. Whereas he had once felt ashamed for bringing trouble upon Anna, he now recognized that the conversation needed to happen. "If it wasn't me," he told a friend, "it would have been someone else." Together with Anna, he began meeting local activists, working on a plan to petition the town council for improved racial sensitivity training and better protections. Day by day, what had begun as a single stand against hate turned into an unstoppable community movement. As the growing crowd of protesters outside Homie's Diner merged with the traveling biker community, the scene became impossible to ignore. Motorcycles lined the street, gleaming chrome and leather forming an unlikely but powerful symbol of solidarity. Their riders, men and women of various racial backgrounds, spoke with conviction about why they had come. They refused to sit idly by while Thomas's dignity was trampled, and they admired Anna's courage for taking a stand against injustice at the cost of her own livelihood. Almost overnight, the diner became ground zero for a larger debate on how racism festers in seemingly quiet corners of the country. Anna stood near the back of the crowd, a mixture of awe and gratitude washing over her. She had always believed that most people were good, but seeing this many strangers rally on her behalf felt surreal. Some came to share personal stories of facing racial prejudice at work or in their neighborhoods, others simply wanted to show that hate would not go unanswered. Although she felt a renewed sense of purpose, Anna was also keenly aware of the diner's manager watching through the window, wearing an expression that was equal parts alarm and regret. Thomas, for his part, was visibly moved by the outpouring of support. He spent hours talking to different biker groups, listening to their experiences and telling them his own. As the conversation deepened, it became clear that the incident at Homie's Diner was merely a flashpoint for frustrations simmering under the surface of countless communities. People discussed how small acts of racism could escalate, how silence allowed discrimination to take root, and how individuals like Anna could shift an entire town's perspective by refusing to back down. Within days, local civil rights leaders arrived to coordinate the demonstrations, ensuring they remained peaceful yet impactful. They helped organize daily marches and candlelight vigils, transforming what had begun as a small protest into a full-fledged movement. Parents brought their children to learn why standing against bigotry mattered, while older residents, who had seen similar struggles decades earlier, remarked that such unity felt long overdue. Social media buzzed with photos and videos of bikers standing shoulder to shoulder with families, chanting for justice. Fearing the long-term damage to his business, the manager finally decided to step outside and address the crowd. He cleared his throat, eyes darting nervously from one person to the next. Though his tone initially wavered, he managed to acknowledge the diner's role in failing to protect Thomas from discrimination. The crowd listened, arms crossed, waiting to see if real accountability would follow. Leaning into the microphone, the manager offered a public apology to Thomas and extended an olive branch to Anna, promising to meet community leaders and introduce anti-discrimination measures for his staff. When the manager finished, a moment of tense silence swept over the gathering. Then, amid the roar of engines and the shuffle of feet, applause began to build. While it didn't erase the harm done, his words signaled a step toward healing. Anna exchanged a grateful glance with Thomas, silently acknowledging that their combined resilience, and the powerful support of countless others, had set the stage for much-needed change. In the days following the public apology outside Homie's Diner, the community felt the first tangible signs of healing after the tumultuous events that had rocked the small town. The manager, visibly humbled by the overwhelming pressure from protesters, bikers, and local citizens, had taken a step many thought impossible by issuing a sincere public apology to both Thomas and Anna. Though some skeptics doubted the change, the apology marked a turning point, a moment when the diner and the town acknowledged the deep-rooted racism that had been allowed to fester for far too long. Immediately after the apology, community leaders, civil rights advocates, and local officials gathered to outline a plan for change. A series of town hall meetings were scheduled to address the systemic issues that allowed racial discrimination to go unchecked in places like Homie's Diner. Anna was invited to speak at these meetings. While she was still recovering from the personal and financial toll of being fired for doing what she believed was right, her voice now carried the weight of a moral conviction that inspired others to share their stories of injustice. Thomas, who had long been a quiet, steady presence in the diner, found himself at the center of a movement calling for dignity and respect for all. With the support of local activists and the biker community, he became a reluctant spokesperson for those who had suffered silently in the shadow of discrimination. Together with Anna, he helped draft new guidelines for business practices in the town, ensuring that anti-discrimination training would become mandatory for all employees in public establishments. The media continued to cover the unfolding story, with national outlets lauding the town's move toward accountability and change. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #RespectForAll and #StandWithAnna, as countless individuals from across the country shared how the courage of a few could spark widespread transformation. Among the new supporters was Sam Carter, a respected figure in the security industry, who offered Anna an opportunity to join his firm. His proposal was not just a job offer, it was a promise of a future where integrity and courage were recognized and rewarded. Despite the tempting career prospects, Anna decided that her role was not solely to rebuild her own life but to be a catalyst for enduring change. She declined the immediate job offer, choosing instead to continue her advocacy work, partnering with community groups to establish mentorship programs for young people and organizing workshops on racial sensitivity. The transformation of Homie's Diner into a symbol of both past mistakes and future hope resonated deeply with the entire community. As days turned into weeks, the diner slowly began to see a resurgence of customers, many of whom came to support the new vision for an inclusive community. The manager, now working closely with local leaders, implemented sweeping reforms and hosted diversity training sessions for his staff. Though the scars of the incident would remain, the collective efforts of the community began to mend the wounds of racism. In that small town, a legacy of intolerance was finally challenged by the power of unity, accountability, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserves respect. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, hope and change were on the horizon. Reflecting on these events, the most profound lesson is that standing up against injustice requires both courage and compassion. Through Anna's brave defense of Thomas, we learn that a single act of kindness can ignite a movement and challenge deeply ingrained racism. This story reminds us that discrimination must be confronted head-on, not ignored or dismissed for the sake of convenience. Every individual holds the power to make a difference by speaking out against hate and supporting those who are marginalized. Our community is built on unity, empathy, and the willingness to stand for what is right, even when it comes at a personal cost. I encourage you to think about your own experiences and consider how you might help create a more inclusive environment. If this message resonates with you, I'd love for you to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Your voice matters, and together, we can shape a future where respect and understanding prevail.